I never thought my world could shatter with just one confession, until my brother told me a secret that left me speechless. What he revealed not only changed the way I saw him, but also made me question everything I thought I knew about our bond. I wasn't ready for the truth, and I doubt you'll be either. My relationship with my brother had always been something I cherished. Growing up, we were inseparable, playing games, sharing secrets, and protecting each other from trouble. He was the calm, collected one, always thinking things through, while I was more outgoing and quick to act. Despite our differences, we balanced each other perfectly. As we got older, life naturally pulled us in different directions. He focused on his studies and later his career, while I pursued my own dreams. But no matter how busy we became, our bond remained strong. We still found time to catch up, share laughs, and lean on each other during tough times. I always admired my brother. He was disciplined, smart, and someone I could always count on. But I never thought there could be sides to him that I didn't know, layers that he'd kept hidden from me all these years. It all started during one of our usual family gatherings. We were sitting in the living room, reminiscing about childhood memories, like the time we pranked our parents or how we used to compete to see who could eat the most candy. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, feeling the warmth of those simpler times. But then the conversation took an unexpected turn. We started teasing each other about our habits and appearances. It was all in good fun, until my brother said something that stopped me cold. "You've always had the wrong idea about me," he said with a strange smile. I laughed it off at first, thinking he was just messing with me like usual. But something about his tone, the way his eyes locked with mine, made me pause. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. He shrugged, brushing it off like it was nothing. But the moment lingered in my mind long after the conversation had ended. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something that could change everything I thought I knew about him. Little did I know, that moment was just the beginning. I couldn't stop thinking about what my brother had said that day. His words echoed in my mind. "You've always had the wrong idea about me." What did he mean? Was he joking, or was there something deeper he hadn't told me? The next morning, over breakfast, I decided to bring it up again. "Hey, about what you said yesterday, what did you mean by that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up from his coffee, a slight smirk on his face. "You're still thinking about that?" "Of course I am. You can't just drop something like that and expect me to forget it," I said, half laughing but mostly serious. For a moment, he seemed like he might open up, but then he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "You wouldn't understand," he said, leaving it at that. I didn't push him, but my curiosity only grew stronger. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to him, his mannerisms, the way he talked, and even the way he avoided certain topics. And that's when I noticed it. He was more guarded than usual, checking his phone often and taking calls in private. He started coming home late, saying he had errands to run or that he was meeting friends. But it wasn't just his actions, it was his body language. He seemed restless, distracted, almost as if he was carrying a secret he couldn't share. One evening we were watching TV, and I decided to test him. "So, is there something you're not telling me?" I asked bluntly. He froze for a moment, then gave a short laugh. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know. You've been acting different lately." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to me with a look I couldn't quite read. Part nervous, part serious. "Sometimes people aren't what they seem," he said quietly. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pressed. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he stopped himself. "Forget it," he said, standing up and leaving the room. I sat there, replaying the moment over and over again. What was he hiding? And why couldn't he tell me? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. I started imagining all kinds of possibilities. Was he in trouble? Did he have a secret life? Or was it something even bigger? Something that could shatter the image I had of him forever? I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. And I was determined to find out the truth, no matter what it took. Days passed, but the tension between us only grew. I couldn't let it go, his words, his behavior, the strange way he seemed to dodge my questions. My mind kept running wild, trying to piece together the puzzle. Then one evening, everything changed. We had both decided to hit the gym together, a rare activity we hadn't done in years. It felt like old times at first, joking around and pushing each other through workouts. But there was still something unspoken lingering between us. After the session, we headed to the locker room. That's when it happened. I wasn't prepared for what I saw, or how it made me feel. He had just come out of the shower, a towel wrapped loosely around his waist. At first, I barely noticed. But then, out of the corner of my eye, something caught my attention. I froze. My heart raced. Was this what he meant? Was this the truth he'd been hiding all along? I tried to look away, but I couldn't. My mind swirled with confusion and disbelief. I suddenly felt embarrassed, like I had crossed a line without meaning to. And yet, there was something else, something I couldn't explain. A mix of admiration, curiosity, and guilt all wrapped into one. He must have noticed my reaction because he turned to me with a knowing look. "Now you see what I meant," he said quietly, almost like he was challenging me to confront the truth. I didn't know what to say. My mouth opened, but no words came out. "Don't make this weird," he added, his tone lighter, as if trying to defuse the tension. But the weight of the moment hung in the air. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything, his words, his body language, and the way he had looked at me in that moment. I knew this wasn't just about what I saw. It was about how it made me feel, and what those feelings said about me. I started questioning myself, my thoughts, and even my relationship with him. Had I been blind to something all along? Or was this moment stirring up emotions I didn't know existed? The next day, I confronted him. "Can we talk?" I asked nervously. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "Sure." We sat down in the living room, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "I don't know what's going on," I admitted. "But ever since that night, I can't stop thinking about what you said, or what I saw. And it's messing with my head." He leaned back, his expression serious. "You're overthinking it," he said, but his voice didn't sound convincing. "No, I'm not," I pressed. "You wanted me to know something, and now I do. But I don't know how to handle it." For a long time, he didn't say anything. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "Maybe it's not something you need to handle. Maybe it's just something you need to accept." His words hit me hard. Was he asking me to see him differently? To accept parts of him I had never known before? I felt a strange mix of vulnerability and connection in that moment. It was uncomfortable, yet also deeply intimate. "I don't know if I can," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You don't have to," he replied. "Just don't let it change how you see me." But it already had. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, I couldn't ignore the shift that had happened between us. I couldn't escape the weight of what had happened. No matter how much I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, the feelings lingered, unanswered questions, growing tension, and an unshakable curiosity that left me restless. I knew I had to confront it once and for all. That evening, I asked my brother if we could talk privately. He hesitated at first, but eventually he agreed. We sat on the balcony, the cool night air doing little to calm my nerves. "I need you to be honest with me," I started, my voice trembling slightly. He leaned back, arms crossed, looking guarded but not entirely closed off. "About what?" "You know what," I said, meeting his eyes. "What's going on with you? What is it you've been trying to tell me?" For the first time, I saw something crack in his expression. It wasn't just guardedness anymore, it was vulnerability. He sighed deeply, running his hand through his hair. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way," he admitted. "Find out what?" I pressed, my heart pounding. "There's more to me than you think," he said, his voice low. "Things I've kept hidden because I didn't know how people would react. And now you're looking at me like you don't know me anymore." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just talking about what I saw in the locker room. This went deeper. "Do you really think that?" I asked. "That I'd judge you?" He looked away. "You're not the first person who has." I reached out and touched his hand. "You're my brother. Nothing changes that." For the first time, he let his guard down completely. He told me everything. The insecurities he had carried for years, the assumptions people made about him based on his quiet personality, and the ways he had hidden parts of himself to avoid judgment. He confessed that he had spent so much time trying to fit in that he lost pieces of who he really was. And it wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, and even creative. That's when he told me about his sculptures. "You sculpt?" I asked, completely caught off guard. He nodded. "It's the one thing that feels like mine. Something I can control, something that lets me express what I can't say out loud." I was stunned. This wasn't just about his appearance or his body. It was about his soul, his struggles, his fears, and his way of coping with them. "I want to see them," I said without hesitation. He looked surprised but agreed. The next day, he took me to his workshop. Walking in felt like stepping into another world. The room was filled with sculptures, raw, emotional, and breathtakingly detailed. Each one seemed to tell a story, capturing moments of joy, pain, and longing. I felt overwhelmed. "Why didn't you ever show this to anyone?" He shrugged. Because it's personal. It's not for approval or validation. It's just me. I walked through the room, admiring every piece. It felt like I was seeing my brother for the first time, truly seeing him. And for the first time, I understood why he had been so guarded. You need to show these to the world, I told him. He shook his head. I'm not ready for that. But I wasn't about to let him hide anymore. Over the next few weeks, I helped him organize his first exhibition. It wasn't easy. He doubted himself every step of the way. But when the day finally came and people flooded in to admire his work, I saw something change in him. He stood taller, prouder. And when people complimented his art, he didn't hide behind his insecurities anymore. Later that night, after the exhibition, he turned to me and said, "Thank you." For what? For seeing me, for not running away when things got complicated. I smiled, tears threatening to spill over. That's what family's for. After the exhibition, things felt different, but not in a bad way. It was like a weight had been lifted off my brother's shoulders. He no longer carried the burden of hiding who he really was, and I saw a new confidence in him that I hadn't seen before. But with that newfound confidence came a ripple effect, and not all of it was easy to handle. For one, the exhibition stirred curiosity among friends and family. Everyone wanted to know more about his work, his inspiration, and even the story behind his sculptures. While most reactions were supportive, there were still whispers, questions about why he had kept this hidden for so long and what else he might be hiding. I saw how those whispers affected him. Even as he smiled and thanked people for their compliments, I knew the doubts were still there, lurking beneath the surface. One evening, we sat down to talk. "You're doing great," I told him. "Everyone loved your work." He nodded but didn't look convinced. "What if it's not enough?" "It's more than enough," I assured him. "You're finally showing people who you really are. That's what matters." But I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't fully convinced. And I couldn't blame him. Years of hiding had left scars, and even though he was opening up, part of him was still afraid of being judged. That fear came to the surface a week later when someone left a negative comment about his sculptures online. It wasn't even constructive criticism, just cruel words meant to tear him down. I found him in his workshop later that day, staring blankly at one of his pieces. "Don't let them get to you," I said. He shook his head. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have kept this to myself." I grabbed his shoulders and made him look at me. "No, you didn't come this far just to let one person's opinion undo everything. Your work matters. You matter." He didn't say anything, but I saw the tears welling up in his eyes. That moment reminded me of how fragile confidence can be, and how much strength it takes to keep pushing forward. Over the next few weeks, he started spending more time in his workshop, pouring his emotions into new pieces. It was his way of coping, and I made sure to be there for him whenever he needed to talk. But it wasn't just about him anymore. The whole experience made me reflect on myself, too. How quickly we judge people based on appearances, and how much we overlook the deeper parts of who they are. I realized that I had taken my brother for granted in so many ways. I thought I knew him, but in reality, I had barely scratched the surface. One night, we sat on the balcony again, just like we had when this whole journey started. "I'm proud of you," I told him. He smiled. "I'm proud of me too." And for the first time, I believed him. As time passed, the initial shock and tension gave way to a sense of acceptance and growth. My brother's journey of self-discovery had not only changed him, but had also reshaped the way I saw the world and myself. He continued creating sculptures, each one more powerful and expressive than the last. His workshop, once a private sanctuary, became a place where he invited others to connect with his art. What started as an outlet for his hidden emotions had become a source of inspiration for so many people. But the most remarkable change was within him. He carried himself differently, more open, more assured. The insecurities that once weighed him down seemed to have lifted, replaced by a quiet confidence. And for the first time, I saw him truly happy, not just with his art, but with himself. One evening, as we sat together reflecting on everything that had happened, he said something that stuck with me. I used to think that hiding parts of myself made me stronger," he admitted. "But I've realized that real strength comes from showing who you are, even when it's scary." His words hit me hard. They weren't just about him, they were about all of us. How often do we hide pieces of ourselves out of fear? How many parts of our identity do we bury, afraid of being judged or misunderstood? Watching my brother step into the light made me realize the importance of embracing vulnerability. It's not weakness, it's courage. I learned that the people we think we know best can still surprise us, and sometimes those surprises are what bring us closer. My brother's story taught me that no matter how strong the bond, there's always room to grow, to understand, and to connect on a deeper level. And perhaps the biggest lesson was this: true acceptance starts within. We spend so much time trying to prove ourselves to others, but at the end of the day, the only validation that truly matters is the one we give ourselves. As my brother's sculptures gained recognition, he started receiving offers to display his work in galleries. At first, he hesitated, still battling the remnants of self-doubt. But this time, he didn't let fear hold him back. He took the leap. And when his art finally reached the world, it wasn't just his talent that people saw, it was his story. And through his story, others found the courage to embrace their own truths. As for me, I walked away from this experience with a renewed appreciation for the people in my life. I learned that there's always more beneath the surface. Layers waiting to be uncovered, stories waiting to be told. And sometimes it takes a single moment, a revelation, a confession, or even an awkward silence, to break down the walls and truly see someone for who they are. So if there's one thing I hope others take from this story, it's this: never be afraid to dig deeper. Because what you find might just change everything. What would you have done if you were in my position? Could you handle such a shocking revelation about someone you thought you knew? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story made you think, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. You won't believe the twists coming in our next story.